Richard first. So, Richard, do you want to introduce yourself a bit more and explain a little bit and run on to your session when you're ready?
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm an ex-head teacher, and currently I'm project lead for Confident Choices, which is the Lincolnshire Careers Framework. Came to Lincolnshire a couple of years ago, and what was clear talking to people was that the particular geography of Lincolnshire, the fact that it's a big county, that it's a very varied county, meant that there were particular challenges in collaboration. Quite a lot of stuff tended to be Lincoln-centric, and that created issues for people in other parts of the county. And one of the other things that was said to me was that things didn't always seem as joined up as they might be. So there are lots of partners who want to work with schools. Schools are often inundated, as we've already heard this morning, by email after email offering different things to schools. And people said, could you bring some clarity to all of that? So that's what we've been doing for the last 18 months or so now. We've been trying to get school-to-school collaboration working much more effectively. We've got clusters based loosely on the districts, the Lincolnshire districts, each with a lead school. And we've also encouraged different partners, public partners and commercial partners as well, to work through those clusters and to talk to each other as they do so. And I think we've been successful. It was going really, really well until COVID came along. It's been much more challenging since, and we're trying to pick that up again now and respond to that challenge, look at what we need to do to support people at this particular time. So a couple of things that we have done, and John's been involved with very much with the first one, is produce a series of webinars, Confident Choices webinars, and John's been very supportive of that. And also currently we're looking at how to tackle the whole issue of, I suppose, loosely virtual work experience, but a bit broader than that. How can we get resources into a shape that will be easy for schools to use, that introduce business, that tackle the employability skills agenda. So we're looking at that, and that's something that all our partners are working on. So we've got Link Hire working in there, we've got the LEP working in there, we've got Lead Schools working in there, we've got STEM Learning working in there. We're bringing everybody together to produce something collaboratively. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to ensure there's great collaboration across the careers education position in Lincolnshire. Do you want me to go straight on, John?
That would be fantastic if you could, Richard. Smashing.
Okay, so I'm going to try this challenging thing of sharing my screen again. Let's have a look. Got it?
Perfect. Yeah,
okay.
Lovely.
All right, and I'll make that into a slideshow. There you go. So the question was, what does a good careers intent statement look like? I think we've had an awful lot of pointers for that already this morning. In fact, it's always tricky when you go third. You feel your thunder's been stolen a bit. But I'm going to, I think in the course of what I say, I'm going to make three particular points, or at least I found myself doing that naturally last time, so I suspect I'll do it again this time. I'm going to draw three things out that either haven't been said or have only been implied so far. So let's crack on, and I'll do it quickly because I haven't got a lot of slides, because what John and I really want is for people to chip in, to contribute, to ask questions on this or anything we've heard so far today. So we've heard a lot about Ofsted, and I apologise for talking about Ofsted again, but actually, whatever we may think of Ofsted, they do produce a lot of good stuff. And in their current framework, this is what they say the curriculum is, and absolutely this is what it is. And you can see the intent there in the aims, you can see the implementation in the structure, and you can see the impact in the evaluation. And whilst we're particularly talking about intent in this workshop, you can't really disentangle that from the other two I's, and we're going to stray into that territory without too much apology. But that's what we're trying to do. And anything you write, anything you set out about the curriculum must take those three into account. This is maybe where I'm going to say something that hasn't really been said so far. When you think about the importance of the careers curriculum, there are three things. So it's the knowledge that young people need to navigate through careers and all the choices that lie ahead of them. It's also the skills that they need to do that. But what I found as a head teacher was, crucially, it's the third one, which is confidence. I was saying in the previous breakout room and the previous workshop that it probably took me about 2 years as a head to realise this. And that was despite having been involved in careers education over many years in different ways. I really emphasised careers in my school, and we knew what knowledge and skills we were trying to get the young people to have, and this is way before Gatsby and so on. We were clear about what we thought we were clear about what we were trying to do, but actually it didn't seem to be making a lot of difference. And what we realised was that actually your careers curriculum also needs to tackle this whole issue of confidence. So what are your pupils confident in doing, and how are they confident about their futures? We discovered that students could have a great knowledge of what the local labour market looked like, a great knowledge of careers routes, progression routes. They could have a lot of skills in terms of putting together a CV, maybe in terms of knowing where to look, to find out about things. But in the end, they still ended up doing what their mum or dad did, because actually they had confidence they could do that. They'd say things like, somebody like me can't do X or wouldn't be able to be Y. And for me, how do you tackle that? Think about that when you're coming to your intent in the curriculum. Sorry to bang on about that, but it's really, really important. So the careers curriculum will, and we've heard this already, what learning, how will it happen? So in what order? We talk about sequencing, at what point, in what ways, but so crucially, how is it relevant to your school? Your school's unique. So what is it that you have to do, and in what way that other people don't have to do? And Ryan mentioned that. He said, it's no good AET having a policy that doesn't understand that their local schools will have a different context. So what's your context, and how are you going to personalise that? We've said, what do you want your students to know, to be able to do, and to be confident doing, and how are you going to get them from where they are now to what you want them to look like when they leave your school? And crucially, how do you measure that? So that's the impact. For me, in terms of where you're aiming to get to, start from the CDI framework. You may want to tweak it. Ryan was talking about tweaking it, but it is the best place to start. And I'm very grateful to John for his tutoring for me in the benefits of the CDI framework. I am absolutely persuaded it's the right place to start. We can talk about that more if you want to. And then I think my other point that I wanted to make, that one of my other points that's a little bit different, it's been implied, but in terms of the actual implementation of the curriculum, the Gatsby benchmarks is only the first place to start. It's a key place to start because it means you don't miss very much, but actually you've got to ask two further questions, which is which benchmarks are most important to your young people at the moment? And secondly, within each benchmark, what's most important for your students? And that's where you keep your eyes on what are you trying to achieve for your young people through your careers program. And be creative, be really creative in terms of opportunities and experiences, and ways that you can deliver the curriculum. So Gatsby is really just the sort of safety net. Start from there and broaden out. And to finish, again, thanks to Ofsted, this is a really good summary, I think. Where would you start? Apart from the fact that the first bullet doesn't include confidence, I think it's really clear. So ask that question. Ask the question about where you're trying to go. How are you going to plan and sequence that across your year groups? And crucially, how is your school different? How is your context different? How are your young people different? And what are you doing to take all the good stuff that's out there and make it absolutely right for you? That's all I was going to say, but I hope there's going to be a good discussion now, John.
Brilliant. No, absolutely. You've provided the foundations for it, certainly, Richard. So thank you for that. So just up on what Carly's already mentioned in the chat here, then, is about, I think the confidence is going to be key, even more so now, given the current climate, seeing students who really lack this kind of thing. And it goes right back to the beginning of the conference today to say, well, we really do have a challenge on our hands here to be able to, I do generally feel that that young people as a demographic will be hardest hit by the recession that will inevitably come. And we've got a role to play here to, even the learners with traditionally high aspirations. I know Carly and is from a more of a grammar school background kind of thing in terms of where she works at, and again might well be looking at high aspirations and high level career pathways to be following on from. But it's really interesting that you're seeing that from your level there as well, Carly. So thank you for sharing that. Just want to pick up on one thing before inviting over for further questions. And it was that point that Richard was mentioning before about the CDI framework, which is a great starting point, really. So I think with the CDI framework, there are a set of outcomes there. There are 3 broad aims which Richard highlighted, and underneath that is 17 outcomes from Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 5. They're not perfect. They can be written in quite a clunky format, really, but they're non-statutory. So what they are is they're a set that you can adopt to be able to meet your needs and meet your learners' needs. I've heard David talk, and he'll talk later on this afternoon, David Andrews, about careers education and about learning outcomes. And what he tends to say, and in a way that only David can, to be able to make it clear, is that when you're just thinking about the outcomes for your learning, for your learners, you can either start with a blank piece of paper and trying to think, well, what do we want them to be able to build from? Or we can start with what's out there and modify it to be able to make sure that it's going to be right for our learners. And the latter is probably the easier approach, really. But remember, there is going to be an updated framework coming out there. So it's definitely what to be using for now, but we'll await. And David, I'm sure, will reference to this later on today about what's happening with the developments for the new national CDI framework. I'll pause at that point. And the way that we did this in the previous session, you probably had a far more sophisticated session in your previous group, so apologies for that. But on the bottom of your screen, there's like a reactions tab there, and you can click on that, and you can either you can choose whichever one you want. You can either have a clap or a thumbs up or heart or whatever it's going to be. But if you just indicate something, it makes me realize that you've got either a question or a comment. Could be on Richard's session. It could be just an area to clarify on from any of the talks today, just to open up to make this a bit more interactive and fit for you to be able to participate. So just give us a clue, and Marie has done that right on cue. Marie, so I'd invite you just to unmute your microphone. You can turn your camera on if you choose. Over to you.
Sorry, I'm just dealing with technology. technology myself. So yeah, I just wanted to say I thought that it's been really good what's been spoken about, particularly about confidence. Certainly the students that we have here at Rushmede do very much, they're quite academic, they do work really hard, but when it comes to that confidence and that being able to interact with people and being able to confidently talk about themselves, that is something that is key for us, and I think we're really going to work on that this year.
Yeah, thanks. I think sometimes, again, it's about understanding your young people, and when you look at something like the Gatsby framework, that doesn't tell you about your young people. So it's absolutely right to say maybe we should spend some more time on working on this particular issue. And so it might be, I mean, I said in the last seminar that a day, a sort of enterprise type day where the young people get the opportunity to try something, and then you can whisper in their ear and say, you did that really well. Do you know that's exactly what you would do in X? It's just those little opportunities to sort of encourage the young people to think, actually, you know what, I could do that. And it's interesting you talk about, you know, sort of grammar school type young people. They often have a very fixed idea about the kind of things they should do. And particularly at the moment where they might think, hang on, those might not be available, that can be quite unsettling.
Yeah, so we're actually a state school, Rushmede Academy, but we have a cohort that are looking for aspirations, and the parents want them to become doctors and dentists and lawyers and things like that, really.
And part of it may be at the moment persuading them that those jobs will still exist in, you know, a few years' time, and there'll be data on that. And also it might be about just encouraging them to think about other things that they can aspire to. But yeah, it's just being creative about the opportunities that you can provide that will just make the young people think, actually, you know what, I could do that. Or maybe that's something I might be able to do.
Yeah, I think as an adult, we've learned an awful lot that we had no idea about before, all of this technology and everything. We've all been on a steep learning curve ourselves, I think.
Certainly have.
Just saw Debbie. I think, did it look like you were wanting to come in there then with a question or comment? So, and so if so, just do go for it.
Sorry, the tighter curriculum in light of the lost learning time for students as an impact of COVID. How do you think schools are going to address the balance between enabling the careers curriculum when they've got so much to catch up with their academics, if you like?
Go on. Do you want to go first, John?
I was going to say, have you been into Janet's workshop yet on intent, Debbie? I'm not sure which ones you've accessed yet as a group. So which one did you have last?
There was an intent one. Can't remember what we just had now, sorry. The needs analysis and recovery program. The TAP spoke first of all, and so it's more about the evidence and the impact.
Yeah, no, absolutely that really, and that's no doubt planted that particular seed, if not from what you see in your own organisation. But I mean, you know, that recovery curriculum is so important, and this is something that there are two ways to be able to implement that really. So some people interpret a recovery curriculum as thinking, right, oh no, our learners have lost so much English and maths kind of thing. So what we need to do is strip back from anything enrichment, anything that might be, you know, non-exam based kind of thing, and absolutely throw them into more and more revision session, catch-up sessions kind of thing. And I think that's something that you'd have to go down with an air of caution really, because I think that the problem is that young people themselves, I mean, they obviously had at least 5 or 6 months out of the school scenario, out of mainstream education, in the home, and not everybody having the best home environments too. people need, my own view, and I know it's echoed with Janet and the recovery curriculum, is that the recovery curriculum should take account to make sure that this is a transition in itself back into school, even now, a few weeks down the line since they've been opened. So what we need to do more than ever is really look at the needs of the learners and to be able to make sure we build the curriculum around them. So it's catch up, but not only in English and maths, it's about the aspiration, the confidence and everything, especially as we learn from, we see north of the border that exams have been cancelled. We see this in this country that they've been put back three weeks at the moment. So we don't quite know what to expect. But my strong advice is not to personally, from my own values, is that things are beyond just exams kind of thing, and we really got a starting point to be able to make sure that learners are happy and transition back into school. Sorry, Richard.
Yeah, no, I think that's. I think John's talked about the ideal,
yeah.
And we won't always be facing the ideal, will we? Because you might believe passionately as a careers leader that actually, you know what, it's more important that we rebuild confidence in young people at the moment, because they're probably thinking, whatever I do, I'm not going to get a job, for example. So we and those of us who believe passionately in careers or in careers leadership in schools, we would absolutely echo what John's just said. Problem is, we might not be able to implement that because somebody else in the school who has a bit more clout might think slightly differently. So in terms of the non-ideal, if your senior leadership team is saying, well, actually, really sorry, but then how do you get around it? Well, it's interesting because we've been talking a little bit about that in some of our Confident Choices meetings. And I think where we ended up was we need to do something as schools that's a bit of a safety net. So ask yourself the question, where within the school curriculum is there still opportunity to do this kind of thing? I mean, I think it was Ryan, it might have been Rachel, getting the two mixed up now, talked about using other lessons and encouraging staff to sort of talk to children in lessons. So when they do an experiment in chemistry, to say, you know what, this is exactly the kind of thing that AstraZeneca are doing or whatever. And that's true if you can get people on board. But also, where is it in the day in school that you might have an opportunity, and it might be within tutorial time. And if you can make the argument, look, I've got a really good careers-based tutorial program that will tackle these issues that are really live at the moment, that will tackle the confidence issue, that will tackle the whatever issue, then you've got a much better chance. Because what you're not probably going to get at the moment is quality chunks of time. So I talked about enterprise days, but realistically, if you go to the head teacher at the moment and say, or the principal, and say, we'd love to run an enterprise day. Well, we know what response you're going to get. So what we're trying to do at Confident Choices is actually get people together to produce a series of 15 to 20 minute sessions, which are an insight into industry and also say something about employment skills and maybe have some other work that the young people can do. So we're trying to do that, and I'm going to be putting out, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be putting out a general, can you help us by writing a session for us? Because if we want enough sessions, we're going to need to bring more people in to do it, because everybody's got a day job. So writing 20 sessions is not going to happen. Writing one session could happen.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think my personal feeling is students can find opportunities to go and explore individual career choices. I think the employability skills is probably one of the key things that we need to try and address in the school so that they're prepared. So the student having their ideals, we can provide them with loads of resources online, give them pointers and so on. It's fitting the employability skills in, and I agree, dropping it into lessons, I'm a big advocate of that. I think it should be second nature to point out how those skills are working and how the students are working. yeah, it's just approaching all staff when you're already under so much stress of the start of this new year, which is so different to a typical year. Nobody's been prepared for it properly. And you constantly feel like you're asking for more and more and more. You know, can you make sure that you're changing your schemes of learning so they're incorporating this, that, and the other? But no, it's. I think there's a little bit of comfort in knowing that we're not isolated. You know, it's the same story across the country. It's not just us. So it'd be interesting, I would say, with the reviews. What are the expectations in terms of Gatsby and the bigger picture, bearing in mind the current situation?
I mean, I think we're hearing, aren't we, at the moment, John, that there's no formal change. The same level of expectations absolutely there. So I think it's about, you know, talking to the people who make the decisions in your school and providing them with solutions. So if you say to them, we've got a problem, haven't we? Because, you know, we've got to demonstrate that we're building young people's confidence back up. Well, here's a solution for you. And the solution is, here's a set of 20 lessons which absolutely tackle that and can be delivered short, sharp in tutorial time. So it's that kind of approach, I think, being realistic about that.
Yeah. Was somebody there flagging a question there? Sorry, did I miss that?
It was me, John. It was Elaine.
Oh, sorry, Elaine. Yeah, come on in there, please, if you can.
It wasn't a question as such. It was just a comment. So, as yourself and Richard know, I don't know if anybody else in the room has met our head, but we don't really have that issue in the school because it's very, very much still a priority for us. And so I do feel quite privileged in that sense that I'm still able to do a lot of things. But having support from SLT and having support from the rest of the staff are not necessarily the same thing. And so I am having a few issues. So what we've been doing is trying to focus on sort of selling it as a well-being mindset. So I speak to a lot of the students and they are scared. Yeah. Their confidence has dropped, their aspirations have lowered. They don't fully understand what is going on necessarily out in the world, and they're just seeing what's affecting them. And they are really worried. And they are very aware of what they missed, particularly our year 11s, with what they missed at the back end of year 10 when a lot of their careers input went in. So they do notice and they are worried. So things such as confidence building that Richard was talking about is really, really key. And for us, it's trying to be creative. I think we are on show for, you know, being creative in our own ways of approaching it, and I think that goes through to what the students are seeing as well. So adaptability, for example, is something that we would normally teach as a work skill. So we're now being adaptive in the ways that we are teaching them and sort of almost showcasing what we can do. So simple things like involving them in, well, we can't do this in maths anymore, but what can we do? And getting the students to have ideas has actually been really, really good because they're now creating their own projects that they can launch with each other. There's a lot of careers work going on as homework. There's a lot of lunchtime clubs that suddenly popped up out of nowhere that are around skills building and things like that. So I think it's about being creative and being adaptive and showing them that we are going to prepare them for the future.
Yeah.
And showing the staff that it can be done if you are willing to think outside of the box.
I completely agree, Elaine. I think that's really important. And really thank you for coming in there with that because, you know, one of the parts here is that's mainly about thinking, well, you know, whether it's SLT or whether it is, you know, our colleagues in school, we've got a role to play to be able to help to say about why this is needed, really. And if people are lacking confidence and aspirations kind of thing, they're not going to come on and do wonders in their exams kind of thing, regardless of how much extra time we put into that. So it's about saying that, and I think take Richard's point that knowing in the real world that you know, that often these things are going to be happening, making things short and sharp and accessible is a really good way to be able to help provide that confidence and inspiration. Now, I've got a couple of slides that I was just going to take through, but I noticed, Carly, you just had your hand up there, so do come in for a final comment there if you'd like to.
Yeah, it was just a quick one. Sorry to go on about the confidence sort of thing, but obviously if we're raising the confidence in the kids, which is fine and bits and pieces that we can all do, for a lot of our students, obviously with the grammar school, the expectation, and probably for a lot of places, is the kind of higher end, your medicine, your science, your Oxford, your Cambridge. For us, we can build the confidence in the students. It's the external home pressures from parents that then knock that. You can tell students, you can give them the skill set to do it, and we can advise parents on the options. The problem is the parents have so much influence, and especially from ethnic backgrounds where that's normally the case as it is, your work that you're then doing is then totally wiped out because the parents are like, you're not going here. I have a student, for example, who's desperate to go into medicine because her dad wants her to go into medicine. She's the oldest of three, but because she's a female within the family, she's considered less able. She's always monitored. She's basically, you know, told that she's constantly not good enough to do that, to achieve that. How any advice from anyone, or how we would go about still enlisting confidence in that young girl, because it's diminishing day by day, hour by hour, and she's desperate to go away from home, but parents are having an influence as to where she is going and what she's doing.
Yeah, it's such a tricky area, and obviously, you know, looking at anything across the curriculum around independence and impartiality when it comes to career choice is always going to be key. But I mean, more than anything, it's a guidance issue, and probably multiple guidance interventions to help her work through those kind of things. So, you know, just to get onto that one-to-one and raise aspirations there. But a really key point, Carly.
Can I just say one thing, John? I did work earlier in my career in a couple of schools that were predominantly Asian heritage kids. And so I've come across this issue numerous times. Both parents pushing students almost beyond where they should be pushing them, and conversely holding them back as well. I mean, I've seen that with other heritages as well. But there can be, as you said, particular issues with parental expectations in some cultures. I would only say one thing really, which is try to focus on winning the parental support in whatever way you can that's appropriate for the thing that really matters. So I certainly didn't tend to pick a fight with parents about, you know, location, going away from home. But then we had the advantage of having universities close by that did pretty much every course between them. So I guess I certainly was prepared to engage with parents usually as a deputy head, and say, you know, have you thought about this, or, you know, what about this possibility? But I would focus on the key thing, which was probably the course, rather than, for example, where that course might be followed. That's just my experience.
Smashing. Thanks, guys. Conscious of time, because we've only got 5 minutes, and then the next workshop group will start and come in. So I just want to give you a very, very brief introduction to some of the support that might be available to help you to document your intent. And all this, I mean, very, very brief introduction, but what I've done is I've done a webinar, recorded webinar through Confident Choices, so you can access 30 to 40 minutes just on this topic here to help you design your documentation for your intents. And that's on our website, Complete Careers, under the blogs. And if you go down to about May time, you'll see this particular title for this session. But what I just wanted to draw on is that around careers, we just heard kind of like program, policy, strategy and development plan kind of like branded together all the time, really, without really having a clear understanding about what each of them cover. And what I just wanted to look at is to help you to be able to structure them. So that careers policy, is those guiding principles then really to help you as a careers leader to pull all these things together and really plan your direction, put together your intent, and then detail the implementation about how it's going to be delivered, and finally detail the indicators in which you're going to put in place to review and measure the impact. So that's what the careers policy does. It brings together each element of your careers provision. So looking at the key national contributors, documents like Gatsby and CDI, aims and outcomes for your learners, the local context that you're based on within, and your strategy, bringing in the program, which is more about your implementation, about how it's all going to be covered, and then your audit and compass tool, school development plan, evaluation for your impact. Your strategy is going to be more of that one pager, that one, that to identify everything together, looking at, what is it you're trying to do, and what are the key drivers this year, what your performance is against Gatsby. So if your SLT just wants summary with one page about what's going on, then that can be really useful for your career strategy. Your program is more about that implementation, knitting together all aspects of program delivery, and your development plan is going to be about reviewing of your provision and what can be improved. Now, finally, just as a very brief introduction, we do have support tools through CareerMark. One of those is about how to structure a careers policy, and that's something that mainly you tend to get as a CareerMark member. But throughout this conference and throughout COVID, we'll provide it available for anybody that wants it. And what it looks like is basically this. So it's just a bit of a policy checklist, and there are 10, he says, headline areas there about how to go about structuring your careers policy. An introduction, a description, aims and outcomes, describing your implementation basically, and then going on to detail more about your program for impact and everything. And behind each of those headings, it's just got a little bit of the kind of key things that you might want to consider within that. So that's something that we can send out. There is a webinar on this for more information. So sorry if I had to rush through that quite quickly. But if you need any more help or information on it, you've got my contact details. So do get in touch if we can be of any assistance with that. But to really help to bring your policy together, to kind of like stop it just from being a document that we have to do to being something whereby we can really help you to drive it and really help you to provide the evidence that you need internally but externally too. So it's there. If you think it's going to be of help, we can upload it to the website as part of the conference information so that you've got access to that. I think Richard and I will be magically disappearing before your very eyes in a few moments, hopefully, and be placed into the next workshop. But thank you all for being such a proactive group. Any final questions for one another, really, in case Richard and I do suddenly disappear? So just remember throughout all the workshops that you guys are on the front line doing a lot of the work. So, do keep questions and direct them not just to your facilitators, but to each other too.
John.